Kemi Badenoch, it is reported yesterday, is running her Tory leadership campaign from the house of a man called Neil Record, who has links to the Institute of Economic Affairs, where he was, I think, chairman, the Restore Trust organisation that sought to challenge, if you like, the National Trust over its practice of publishing the history of National Trust properties in National Trust properties. And he's also involved in Net Zero Watch, which is an organisation dedicated to promoting... Well, why don't we ask Sam Bright? Sam's an investigative journalist and the UK deputy editor of DeSmog, an organisation providing facts about global warming as well as working to dismantle misinformation campaigns. So she, who would be leader of the Conservative Party, is accusing other people of hypocrisy while running her own campaign from the house of Neil Record. In the context of your field of expertise, Sam, what do we know about Neil Record and Net Zero Watch?
Yes, well, pleasure to be on, James. Neil Record is the chair of Net Zero Watch, so he holds a very senior role at the organisation. And Net Zero Watch is essentially a climate denial campaign group. So it's attached to the Global Warming Policy Foundation, another vaguely named Tufton Street group. And they essentially campaign against clean, renewable energy. The GWPF in particular, so the parent organisation, seeks to deny or downplay the fact that man-made climate change is in fact happening. And they're part of this sort of cabal that you've written about extensively. And
so have you.
Also,
I relied on you to do what I did. So let's be clear about where the credit lies on this front, Sam.
That's far too kind of you, James. But yeah, they want to see a sort of bonfire of regulations in Britain that would turn our country into sort of a Texas upon Thames. And Neil Record is very much at the forefront of that.
We know also that he's given £10,000 to Kemi Badenoch's leadership campaign. And she said on stage yesterday, let's get this quote correct, "I'm not a climate sceptic, but I am a net zero sceptic. I did not become an MP to deliver a plan led by Ed Miliband." So, I mean, given what you've told us about the role of Net Zero Watch in public discourse, that looks like money well spent.
Yeah, and I think this is a broad trend among the Conservative Party as a whole. We reported on the fact at DeSmog that between the 2019 general election and the 2024 contest, the party received £8.4 million from climate science deniers, from fossil fuel interests, and from major polluters. So this is, Kemi is very much fitting into the pattern of what is happening in the Conservative Party at the minute, and that's reflected in its net zero policies.
Thank you, Sam Bright, author of Bullingdon Club Britain and the UK deputy editor of DeSmog. He's a busy man, this Neil Record, when he's not hosting Kemi Badenoch in his lavish London townhouse. He's also, as Peter Geoghegan will tell us, a former chair, I think, of the so-called Institute of Economic Affairs, Peter. So what do we know about that?
Well, he's former chair, but still life president, James.
Oh, gosh.
A grand title, yeah. So James.
But hang on a minute. Isn't the Institute of Economic Affairs the place that's widely regarded as having been the sort of petri dish for Liz Truss's premiership?
Very much so. That's exactly where people.
And now the life president is trying to get another person to the top of the Conservative Party, or helping another person get to that. Have they learned nothing?
Well, maybe they might look upon it and say it went so well the first time. Maybe they're looking for more than 49 days in the job.
I mean, the triple, and we're going to find out a little bit more about Restore Trust in a moment as well, which is another organisation with which he's heavily involved. How do we describe their mission statement or their mission in public discourse, the IEA?
Well, very much. So the IEA would see themselves as being at the forefront of cutting red tape, of shrinking the state, etc. Very much the Liz Truss budget, the disastrous budget that we still talk about, well, the fiscal event, because let's not forget it wasn't actually a budget. That was the IEA in action. Tax cuts for the wealthy, and club and basically a shrunken state and less public services for everybody else, for all of us. The incredible thing about the IEA in many respects was just how much influence they were able to bear on the British government not too long ago. So what you have is Neil Record left as chairman of the IEA in 2023, so after Liz Truss. But as Liz Truss was as was actually put on record by Tim Montgomery, the former Conservative advisor, incubated Liz Truss. So Liz Truss's ideas really came from the IA. She used to
They
go
were
every
boasting.
week.
I remember they were boasting about the fact that she was the MP who'd attended more of their events, I think, than any other. And I think Mark Littlewood, who was the I forget what job titles they give themselves, Lord High Panjandrum, I think, he described Liz Truss's fiscal event in the most glowing of terms.
This was the IEA in action. This is what Neil Record had. This is what the Neil Record is a life president of. He's also a very prominent Conservative donor. He gave lots of money to various to the party, as well as, if you remember, a former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. Was very much he gave £32,000 to Matt Hancock over the years. He's given quite large sums to Tories over the years. And as we can see now, he seems to have a particular shine for one of the would-be leaders.
He's described her as having stardust that reminds him of Margaret Thatcher. Thank you, Peter Geoghegan, author of Democracy for Sale and editor of the Substack Democracy for Sale. And finally, Rowan Moore, the architecture critic for The Observer and author of Property, The Myth That Built the World. He's a busy man, this Neil Record, when he's not giving donations to the Conservative Party or being life president of the IEA or running or keeping a hand on the tiller of Net Zero Watch. He's also heavily involved in Restore Trust. Rowan, what can you tell us about Restore Trust?
Well, Restore Trust is what you call an AstroTurf organisation. That is to say, it's something that sort of purports to speak for kind of grassroots for the people, but actually is pretty opaque about where its money comes from and who its members are. Its aim in life is to kind of capture the leadership of the National Trust, the extremely successful, well-beloved organisation, basically because they think it's too woke. So they want to de-wokeify it.
And by woke, I always pressure people to tell us exactly what they mean by when they use that word, albeit that you are merely the vessel on this occasion through which their use of the word woke is deployed. What do they mean when they use that word? What would they consider really to be woke?
The thing that really got them going is that in 2020, the National Trust commissioned a report looking at the links between their properties and slavery and colonisation, which is...
What, actual historical facts, you mean?
A matter of historical fact. It was simply a report. It made no recommendations. The thing that really annoyed them was the National Trust owned Chartwell, which was Winston Churchill's house, and this report made the truthful statement that Winston Churchill opposed Indian independence. That's what kicked it off. And since then, every year, and it's coming up again this autumn, they try and get a slate of candidates elected to the National Trust Council, which is a kind of advisory body. And then they get upset about other things, which then get amplified by certain right-wing newspapers, like
chiefly the Daily Telegraph, I think,
and the Daily Mail.
And the Daily Mail, as nobody will be surprised to hear. So, goodness me, what an extraordinary, active individual he is. Has anyone ever voted for him? He seems to wield extraordinary influence.
Not I'm aware of. No.
Okay, Rowan Moore. Thank you. Architecture critic for The Observer, Peter Geoghegan, the author of Democracy for Sale, and Sam Bright, the investigative journalist, looking at just some of the strings to the bow of the man who has lent Kemi Badenoch his luxurious London townhouse from which to run her campaign. She has declared £10,000 donation from Neil Record, but she hasn't thus far declared the loan of the property as it's a flat, I think, not a townhouse, forgive me. Oh, no, that was what Keir Starmer borrowed from Lord Wahid Ali, his parliamentary colleague in the Labour Party, about which Kemi Badenoch had plenty to say.
There is a serious question here. One is that we don't have a conflict of interest, that we are not taking bribes, and that there's no hypocrisy. And I think that Labour looks to have possibly failed on all three of those counts, and that's why there is an issue.
Kemi Badenoch is running her Tory leadership campaign from the house of a wealthy donor, and as yet that support has not been declared on the financial interests register for members of Parliament. A brilliant scoop there by Lucy White at Bloomberg.